After 44 long years, answers to a 1979 Bastrop County cold case are now being revealed.
A Houston woman was murdered in Elgin, and officials weren't able to identify her until now. KVUE's Ford Sanders joins us live from outside the Bastrop County Sheriff's Department with who this woman was and how investigators identified her. Ford?
Quita, Brian, as mentioned, 44 years is how long it's been with no answers when it comes to this homicide that happened here in Bastrop County back in June of 1979. Well, today officials were noticeably emotional delivering this news because they now have identified this woman as then 22-year-old Kathy Ann Smith from Houston. After more than 4 decades, families, friends, and a town now given closure.
There's a family that can rest in peace. And there's an individual who's not an indigent person in a grave. And that's a beautiful thing.
Bastrop County officials identified then 22-year-old Kathy Ann Smith of Houston as the victim of a homicide back in 1979 in Elgin.
Through their diligence and through Sergeant Miller's diligence, we were able to go ahead and identify the body.
Smith's body was found off of Highway 290 and FM 696, but she was buried as a Jane Doe. Sheriff Maurice Cook says investigators exhumed her body from a cemetery in 2019, but DNA evidence wasn't strong enough to come up with a match. Not until they tried again 3 years later, while working with a private lab and a website called DNAsolves.com.
We're able to do forensic genealogy on the case, which led us to a family tree.
As for who killed her, investigators say notorious serial killer Henry Lee Lucas confessed to killing Smith before she was identified. But he'd confessed to more than 200 cases and tried to recant many of his confessions before his death in 2001.
We're considering Henry Lee Lucas as our primary suspect, and I doubt seriously if anything else will happen, but you never know. Stranger things have happened.
Locals like Donnie Cannon say Henry Lee Lucas is a name many across Elgin still know.
And I heard all these stories about murders he had committed to, admitted to committing, and he was a bad guy.
He says back in 1979, things like this didn't happen in Elgin, and they still don't now. Investigators say another factor in this case was the fact that Smith was actually adopted. So it made it difficult for police to initially find family members of her, but they actually just identified her in the last couple of weeks. So since then, they've actually been able to reach out to all known family members. Another factor here, she did leave behind a daughter of her own. Brian, Quita.
All right, thank you so much, Ford. And this is far from the first murder that Henry Lee Lucas confessed to in our area. In 1984, Lucas was convicted of killing a woman in Williamson County who for years was known only as Orange Socks. But he later recanted that confession. That woman was found dead north of Georgetown in 1979, the same year as Kathy Ann Smith. And she was named for what investigators found her wearing when they discovered her body. In 2019, investigators finally learned her name, Deborah Jackson. Investigators found DNA under her fingernails, but it was never formally tied to Lucas or any other suspect.